Hello, I welcome you all to this wonderful lesson. And in this particular lesson, this is physics, lesson 1, Introduction to Physics. So, whenever you are introduced to a subject, first of all, you need to understand what you will be studying in that particular subject. So, this is physics. First thing you need to understand the definition of physics itself before you look at any calculation that is involved. So I wrote down the definition here so that I help you understand even as we get to discuss other things that you are supposed to know. What is physics? So physics is just a branch of science that studies matter. So it studies matter, energy, and the fundamental forces of nature. This is the definition for physics. This is what you are supposed to know and understand. You also need to understand that physics seeks to understand how the universe behaves through observations, experimentations, and mathematical methods. So physics covers a wide range of certain properties of matter, energy. So these are what we are going to be talking about in this particular subject. This is a wonderful subject that I want you people to know and understand. So whenever we are talking about physics, before we go any further, you need to understand what we get to call the 7 fundamental SI units. So they are what we call 7 fundamental SI units. So 7 fundamental SI units. This is what you are supposed to understand. So we call them the 7 fundamental SI unit because each quantity that you are given in physics, it has got each specific SI unit. So they are called the 7 fundamental SI units. Before we look at these fundamental SI units, you need to understand what is a physical quantity. So we need to understand what we call a physical quantity. What is a physical quantity? So in physics, each time we are talking about a physical quantity, you need to understand that a physical quantity is anything that can be measured. Anything that can be what? Anything that can be measured. So anything that can be measured is called a physical quantity. If I ask you what is a physical quantity, you need to tell me that a physical quantity is anything that can be measured. That is a physical quantity. So these things that can be measured, they have got their specific SI unit that you need to understand. And these SI units are used to measure various physical quantities and provides a standardized way to communicate scientific information. You discover that instead of going to USA, you go to Nigeria, they are using their own units. They avoid confusion. So they came up with these 7 fundamental SI units. This is the reason why if you are calculating any question in physics, there is a specific unit that that quantity should be put in. I don't know if you are getting what I am saying. The most important thing is understanding the concept. Once you understand the concept, even as we get to move forward, things will be very simple. So these are SI units that we get to talk of. These are what? The physical quantities. So we've got 7 physical quantities with their specific SI units. So SI, if I tell you that what does the word SI means, SI units means, this is International Standards of Units. So SI stand for International Standards of what? Units. This is what you need to understand. So when I say SI units, what I mean is that this is the international, so international standards of units, international standards of what? Of units. Maybe you get to be confused. People say, okay, what is the SI unit for this? So we are talking about what? the standard unit of a specific physical quantity. So I've told you a physical quantity is anything that can be measured. Anything that can be measured is referred to as a physical quantity. So we've got 7 physical quantities that you need to know and understand. The first one that you need to know, there is what we call length. Length is a physical quantity because you are able to measure length. What is the SI unit for length? It is meter. So length distance is measured in what? It is measured in meter. So we say meter, which is small m. So this is the SI unit, this is the SI symbol. So I want you to get this. This is the what? This is the symbol. So meaning if I give you a question, you are told to measure length, distance, you need to put it in meters. We go to the second one. The second one that we have is called mass. When we go to mass, you know that the SI unit for mass is what? Kilograms. So each time I give you a question in physics, you need to make sure that you express the units in what? Kilograms, kgs. Then we move to the third one. The third one is time. Do you know that you can measure time? Since we can measure time, then time is a physical quantity. So we can measure time in what? In seconds. We measure time in seconds, which is small s, like that. I want you to understand these things that I'm teaching you. I want you to understand everything that I'm illustrating here. We go to the fourth one. The fourth one is called electric current. Do you know that you can measure the electric current? So meaning, since we can measure the electric current, so these ones that I'm listing here, these are called 7 fundamental SI units. Another word that you can use, these are called basic. You can call them basic. You can also call them base. So I want to use every language that come in an exam. Some people call them basic SI units. Some people call them fundamental SI units. Some people call them base SI units. So it just depends. So electric current is measured in what? Amperes. So it is measured in amperes, which is capital A, like this. This is what you need to understand. We move to the fifth one. The fifth one is called temperature. You can measure temperature. So meaning temperature is a physical quantity. Temperature is measured in what? Kelvins, which is capital letter what? Capital letter K. We move to the sixth one. The sixth one is called the amount of substance. So meaning if you can measure the amount of substance, amount of what? Amount of substance. If you can measure the amount of substance, meaning it is a physical quantity. And it is measured in what? It is measured in moles, like this. It is measured in moles. The symbol is this. This is the symbol, just like that. The last one that you need to know and understand. So the last one that each student needs to know and understand is called luminous intensity. Some people call it light intensity, so we can call it luminous, like this intensity. We can call it like this, luminous intensity. This one gets to the SI unit for this physical quantity is called candela. That is the name, candela, like this, candela. What is the symbol? Capital C and small d, like this. So these ones that are listed here, these are the ones that you are supposed to know and understand. Even as we get to go deeper in physics, you need to make sure that you understand these basic units. Aside these, they are what we call derived now. They are what we call derived physical quantities or derived SI units. So when I say derived SI units, what you need to understand is that these are units that are formed by combining these ones that are here. So once we combine basic quantities, we come up with a derived quantity. So let us look at some of the derived quantities that you are supposed to know and understand. So what you need to understand about these derived SI units is that these ones get to be formed if we combine two or more. So when you combine two or more basic units, you come up with a derived unit. Have you seen? Or a derived quantity. So each time you combine two or more basic units, you are going to come up with what we are calling a derived units. These ones are countless. What you need to understand, for example, when we talk of velocity, let's say velocity. So when we go to velocity, you now understand that, okay, this same velocity that is here, this is velocity, isn't it? Velocity just same as the speed. The formula is just the same on the units. So you now discover that this one, the SI unit for velocity or speed is meter per watt per second. What are we combining? We are combining distance and time. So when you combine distance and time, you divide distance over time, you come up with velocity. So this is meter per second. This is what you need to understand. Meter per watt, meter per second. These ones are a lot. The list is countless. So I want you to know this. We know that force, you know that the SI unit for force is what? Is newtons. You know that this is what? These are newtons, which is capital N, like this. Newtons, SI unit for force. So can we say that force is a basic unit? No, because for us to come up with these newtons, we've combined certain basic units. You know, by definition, and if you don't know where we are going, you are going to understand. Force, this is a pull or push on an object. And the formula we get to use for us to find force, we say force is equal to mass times acceleration. The SI units for mass, kgs. Have you seen kgs? We've got the acceleration. Acceleration is meter per second squared. So when you combine these, when you multiply them, that's when we come up with the newtons. So don't say because it is having one unit, then it is a basic quantity. No, we only consider those 7 ones. Those are the only 7 fundamental basic that you are supposed to understand. There are only 7. Any unit that gets to 4 under this, it is a derived. Have you seen? This is what I want you people to know and understand. So I want you to get what I'm teaching you. I want you to get what I am saying here. So when you combine this is just the same as the Newton. You are forming a unit called the Newton, which is capital N. We've got acceleration, same one that I've used there. Whenever we are talking about acceleration, you now need to understand that acceleration measured in what? Meter per second squared. So we are combining some things here. There is what? Distance and time. We've got a lot of things that I can mention here. The list is still going. I can just be mentioning them. So the list is still going, but what I want to get from you is an understanding. I want you to understand everything that I'm going to teach you, everything that I'm teaching in this particular lesson. And I guess you are able to understand what I am teaching. These are things that you are supposed to know. These are things that you need to understand. Even as we get to move forward, we are going to look at a lot of things, especially the derived ones. There are quite a lot. We are going to understand them. You are going to understand even as we get to move forward. So even as we move forward, I want us to look at what we call scalar quantities. They are what we call scalar and vector quantities. You need to understand scalar and vector quantities. I want you to understand these two. They are what we call vector and scalar. So scalar and a vector quantity. What are these two? So this is another subtopic that we need to understand. This is something important that you need to get. So whenever we are talking about a scalar or a vector quantity, so I'll start with a scalar. You need to understand that a scalar quantity, so a scalar quantity, let me write it in full. A scalar quantity only, so a scalar quantity only has magnitude. Have you seen only as what? Magnitude. What is this same magnitude? Magnitude is just the same as size. It is just one and the same. So it only has what? Magnitude. This one only has magnitude only. So if I tell you what is a scalar quantity, a scalar quantity, this is a quantity that only has magnitude. When I say it only has magnitude, it means that its SI unit cannot be expressed as a negative. You cannot find a negative. You only find positive answers. So these scalar quantities will include the following. We talk of mass. Mass is a scalar quantity. You cannot find negative 10 kg. You can't find that, okay, this baby is born with negative 0.2 kgs. No, nothing like that gets to happen. So you need to understand that mass is a scalar quantity. We can also talk of what? We can talk of length. This length is just length. So you will never find a length that is negative. Okay, distance from Lusaka to maybe Kawe, it is negative what kilometers? You never find such a thing. Length is always in positives. I want you to get this. Then we also have other things like volume, density. So we've got volume, we've got density. All these things you are supposed to know them. There is distance. All these things you need to understand them. We've got speed. Have you seen speed? You never find negative speed. We've got speed, velocity. Velocity is a vector. So I'm going to show you. We've got energy, temperature, current, voltage. All those things, you cannot express them in what? They cannot be expressed as negatives. So all those things are supposed to be understood. You need to make sure that you understand them. How about now a vector quantity? So let us look at a vector quantity. How about a vector quantity? What is a vector quantity? So a vector quantity, this one is a quantity. So a vector quantity is a quantity. So this one, a vector quantity, I would say is a quantity, is a what? Is a quantity having, so is a quantity having both, so this one is going to have both magnitude, it's going to have both magnitude. This is what you need to understand, both magnitude and direction. So each time we are talking about a vector quantity, we are talking about a quantity that has both magnitude and direction. These ones get to include weight. Have you seen? This is what? Weight. We can talk of weight. So I want you to understand this. We've got weight. We've got displacement. Displacement can be compared to distance because both of them they can be measured in meters, centimeters, but displacement can be in negative because it has both magnitude and direction. You are able to know the direction, and whenever we consider direction, we are also talking about those negatives. We also have velocity. Velocity can be in negatives because it has both magnitude and direction. We can also consider acceleration, force, moment. These are examples. So we can consider acceleration. So you can complete. This is acceleration. We get to have, I have listed velocity. We get to talk of a force. You need to understand all these things. So these quantities, any quantity, anything that can be measured, they are subdivided into two. They are what we call scalar ones and the vector ones. So any quantity that you may think of, it can be These are things that you need to know and understand. So after understanding these scale and physical quantities, we now move on to another wonderful part that is called measurements. So I want us to look at measurements. These are certain things that you need to know. These are things that you need to understand. So it is called measurements. Measurements. I guess we are moving together and you are able to understand what I'm teaching. Measurements. So measurements here, we want to measure what? Measure length. So we are just measuring what? Measuring length. For us to measure length, there are certain equipments that will be used. There are certain instruments that get to be used for us to measure length. The first one that you need to understand, an instrument that can be used to measure length is called, so the first one that I want you to understand is called a measuring tape. So this is measuring. It is called the measuring what? Measuring tape. Then the second one, we get to call it a ruler. I guess we know. Then the third one is called a vernier caliper. We call it a vernier caliper. It's called a vernier caliper. The fourth one is called a micrometer. So it is called a micrometer screw gauge. This is what you need to understand. Micrometer screw gauge. So I want you to understand. These are the most used instrument in the world to measure length. So each time you want to measure length, we consider these instruments that are here. So this instrument, you discover that this one is used if we want to measure what? If we want to measure long length, like this. This one is used if we want to measure medium length. If you want to measure medium what? Medium length. This is what you need to use. We use a ruler. We now go to a vernier caliper. This one is used to measure short length. So say short what? Short length. When you go to this one is used to measure very short length. Very short what? Very short length. This is what you need to understand. So these are equipments that you are supposed to know. These instruments, if you have a long distance, you can measure using a measuring tape. If it is just a medium length, you use a ruler. If you are talking about short distances, we are going to go in details with this, but I just want you to understand everything that I will be teaching here. I want you to know this. I want you to understand, more especially the concept. The most important thing is getting the concept. And the way questions do come in an exam, it is the understanding on these things that will enable you answer an exam question. So I just want you to know these things and how to go about exam questions. There is also what we call the accuracy. So after understanding all these, you also need to understand what we call the accuracy of these instruments. What is the accuracy of a measuring tape? What is the accuracy of these things? So the accuracy of a measuring tape is 1 millimeters. This is the accuracy. The accuracy of a ruler is also 1 millimeters. The accuracy of a vernier caliper, so this vernier caliper is 0.1 millimeters. 0.1 millimeters in meters, in centimeters, it is 0.01 centimeters. Don't be confused. So I want you to get this. When we go to this one called a micrometer screw gauge, since this is the most sensitive instrument in the world that can be used to measure length. It is 0.01 millimeters. This is the most sensitive instrument that is used to measure length. So these are certain things that I want you to know. These are certain things that I want you to understand. So on the first one and the second one, a measuring tape, I guess we can all measure something using a measuring tape. If I give you a ruler, you are able to do something using a ruler. That's not something that is so difficult. You are able to do that using a ruler. Have you seen? So these things are very simple. You just need to know how to go about them. A ruler and a measuring tape, these ones are very simple. So these ones are very simple, but our key interest is how to get the readings on a vernier caliper and how to get readings on a micrometer screw gauge. These are the ones that even come in an exam. So focus is on these two. But a measuring tape, a ruler, we all know how to go about that unless otherwise. But no one can fail to measure a distance. Okay, measure a distance of 4 centimeters using a ruler. You are able to do that. We are all able to work out that. So that's something that is not difficult. So this is just an introduction. Next time when we meet for physics, we'll be looking at this part called vernier calipers. We are going to start a vernier calipers. This is what we are going to start with. So these ones, if a question was to come in an exam, what physical quantity does a vernier calipers measure? The answer is what? Length. What physical quantity does a measuring tape measure? Length. What physical quantity does a ruler measure? Length. What physical quantity does a vernier calipers measure? Length. Everything is just length. Even micrometer screw gauge. All these are measuring length. And you know and understand that length is a physical quantity. So the physical quantity, all these 4 measures is called length. You get to have such questions. So I want you to understand this and how to go about this. This is something that you are supposed to know. This is something that I want you to understand. So this is something I want you to understand. Let's make sure that we understand this. This is where we are going to end from. Thank you so much for connecting. So let me give you an exercise. So don't write this heading because there is an exercise coming and I guess you are able to write the notes that I'm giving you. Let's attend to the exercise. So let's attend to the exercise and see how we've understood the little information that I've shared with you. So we are still together, we are going till we write our exams. Thank you so much.